Hello, what's going on, everybody? I'm going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to change up the format. I have a guest here, Football Unlocked. He has a YouTube channel with a great analysis on the NFL and college football, and his ability to convey his message and, like I said, the way he's just really good. Need to check out his channel, Football Unlocked. His analysis is second to none. And yeah, I'm going to give you the floor.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you for having me tonight. It really means a lot to me. Apparently, I need to start off by talking a little bit about who I am, Football Unlocked. And truly, I was a 15-year-old kid in a chemistry class who saw a draft guide and completely fell in love with everything that's behind the game in the NFL. And that continued going until I picked my college because I knew I'd get hands-on experience there. That is something that had not stopped, and we're going on 23 years of that. But it didn't really amount to anything. I wasn't on YouTube, wasn't doing all these channels until I was in Buffalo, New York, and I met the co-creator of Football Unlocked, President Jeff, where we were talking about the 2016, I moved there in 2016, so we were talking about the 2017 draft where Buffalo was sitting 10th on the clock. And they were all talking about, well, what's the quarterback they're going to take? And on their message board, they all wanted Deshaun Watson. And he started asking me about it and realized, wow, this guy's really down the rabbit hole on, draft stuff and things like that. And I told him, you have to take Mahomes. Mahomes is a Hall of Famer. Mahomes is a generational talent. He needs to go to Buffalo. So he brought that back to his message board. We got a little bit of a following behind that on the secondhand accounts. And when I moved back to Milwaukee from Buffalo, he said, we have to do something with this. So Football Unlocked was the idea. And we really hadn't started it until just this last September when one of my coworkers had mentioned, and a regal elder statesman like him mentioned that you should be on YouTube. And I went, I don't really want to be in front of a camera, but if I've got somebody who is a little more seasoned telling me to be on YouTube, then it makes perfect sense to be on YouTube. So we started our YouTube channel up in September. It's been going great. I appreciate all the support that we've had from it, and we just keep working at it. But the point of Football Unlocked, and it's always been that the marketplace has a lot of the big box boys and a lot of the alphabet soup networks. They're throwing out their hype stories. They want to make clickbait. They want to grab your attention. And I understand that from a marketing standpoint. But I love the game. The game is interesting enough as is. I can't dream up a storyline better than the one we're going to see on Sunday. So for Football Unlocked, what we try and do is we try and grasp reality. We try and be accurate about what we're seeing so that we put you ahead of the game, put you ahead of the curve, and we sell the game as it is because it's more interesting than I am.
I'll tell you, you never think or at least I thought you could never learn something from other people. And like I said, I'm not as big into college football, and your channel is so easy to digest and very, like, the way you speak is very engaging. So I find myself like learning stuff that I otherwise wouldn't know because I just don't pay as much attention to. I mean, just your ability. You talk about like prospects coming out of college, weaknesses, strengths, stuff like that. I never pretend to be that kind of person. So when you can watch somebody who breaks it down, but breaks it down really easily like you do, it's fantastic, man. I just love your approach. Everybody needs to jump on this guy's channel like ASAP tonight. Check it out. It's really good.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. It kind of goes into my background. When I went to college, I came to the school that I went to, and I immediately walked into office, and I'm like, how can I help the football team? And they're like, you'll be film room. Okay, I'm film room. That's where I start. I'm going to crawl my way up. So I was working with the film room. They put me in charge of a software turnover for the conference-wide software turnover of the film. And my job ended up being talking to the technicians and talking to the football coaches. And the technicians were like, it's great that you can convey the complex of what we're saying to the way that the football people understand it. And I love that part of this where I can talk high-end football, but it's so much more fun to talk about it on a level where you take something complex and make it more simple so that everybody can understand it. Because I want all football fans to be in a really good place to understand the game and to grow what they know.
See, if I didn't know any better, I would have thought you went to high school or to college for communications.
That was my major.
Was it your major? Okay, well there you go. Like your ability. Like when I was coming out of high school and going into college in the late '90s, early 2000s, podcasting wasn't a thing. Content creating wasn't a thing. If I was a young guy nowadays with my love for football, and I'm not big on being on camera either, but I just like this sort of media, this sort of platform where people can kind of throw ideas off each other and, have fun and, nobody really thinks too highly of themselves. They just kind of give their opinion and, everybody can have a good time with it. And I just love the whole format. But like as soon as I clicked on one of your videos, because somebody told me to go there, check you out, I was like, man, I don't talk like that. I don't have that kind of delivery. He's so good. So I was very intrigued, and I have some questions here that kind of you've kind of covered them on your channel, but for eyes that I'm trying to attract to your channel, I figured I'd bring them up here and kind of let you kind of maybe not everything that I have you've talked about, but like you've touched on some of this stuff. So I figured if you wanted to, I'll just ask you some questions about the quarterback class coming out this year.
Let's roll.
All right. One of the videos that I looked at and caught my eye right away by the title was you thinking that Trevor Lawrence might not be, this generational quarterback. So my question to you is, why isn't Trevor Lawrence a generational in your eyes? I might have misspelled that. Sorry.
It's fine. With Trevor Lawrence, it's kind of an interesting situation where we have this pedigree of the number one prospect coming out of high school and immediately steps on the college football field and he wins the national championship game, and our minds were made up. And the narratives just kept going from there. But when I look at Trevor Lawrence, I see a prospect who, on the tool side of it, is a very good quarterback. And a lot of people and a lot of the narratives that people hear right now is talking about how, good of a person he is, how smart he is, how good he is pre-snap, how, good of a student of the game is, how much he wants it, even though the quotes that recently came out that some people can banter the other way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of who he is as a person is, the prototype, it's very much so given that hype. But when you look at him as the prospect, I grade mental traits, I grade functional traits, and I grade physical traits. And the mental traits that we have on our side of the game, they aren't intelligence. They are spatial awareness. They are awareness in the pocket. They are vision. They are instinct. And those are the areas where when you watch Trevor Lawrence's film, especially in the last 2 years, you see a lot of questions coming up in that area. He's not seeing corners bail under under his out wide receiver at times. He's not seeing linebackers drift across the coverage and under an RPO route. He doesn't see the safety coming back under on a deep post against Virginia Tech. So the vision issues are there, but more importantly is the tempo aspect, which is the poise, the processing speed, and the decision making within the routes, where we saw LSU. We saw the Ohio State game. And when the going gets tough for Clemson, Trevor Lawrence has not raised that bar. And that's something I look at with every single quarterback. When are you put in a position where you get challenged? And when you get challenged, that's where I want to grade you, because the best of the best are going to overcome that challenge. The worst, or the people who can't overcome that challenge, they're just not going to do that in the NFL either.
Mm-hmm. And it's like they just have, the way that the media covers him, they just proclaim him as like the second coming of Peyton Manning or whatever. And it's just like, first of all, this dude's never played it down in the NFL. And if anybody like yourself who's actually taken an honest look at his game through film study or whatever, I feel like there's sometimes the evaluation of some of these quarterbacks is narrative based, and it drives me absolutely up the wall. Just because a guy fits the profile, 6'6", muscular, can throw it, I can throw it well enough to, beat an NFL level. I look at him and I look at all these other quarterbacks and I'm like, what's different? What's the difference between him and Justin Fields? What's the difference between him and Lance or Trey Lance? And
Right.
to have someone like you who could actually break that down and like actually watch the film and absorb it and be able to kind of like tell other people, but in a way they can understand, is just awesome.
Yeah, we were lucky on that one where we kind of felt we needed to put out a video on that one. So the Trevor Lawrence is not generational video. Actually dropped hours before the Ohio State game. And in that video,
that was an older video. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the video, we actually talk about the specific things we want you to look for in the game. And at halftime, I was like, this is overkill, guy. Like you can play a little bit better than this. Like this is, I understand it's a struggle, but I kind of started feeling bad for him as the game wore on.
So speaking of quarterbacks, who are, I know we have, of course you have Trevor Lawrence, who's top of the heap, the best to ever, generational talent supposedly. And then you have someone like Mac Jones, which is my next question for you. Like what is about him that gets him rated so high on some of these draft boards, and what is your actual assessment of his play?
With Mac Jones, we do actually grade him very high in some of the trait areas that we look at. He is extremely well taught the quarterback position, his footwork in the pocket, his ability to process the field, omit parts of his progressions, move through a play quickly. His vision is good. His anticipation is good. All the mental traits and all the functional traits, they rank really well. But the problem that comes in with the evaluation with me is that if you're somebody who likes the mental traits, you're going to gravitate towards this guy. And that's typically what you'll see from coaches. Coaches will see that precision and see that dependability and think, my playbook's good enough that if I put it through his mind, he can, like a robot, process through it and make it work. But then you look over at the physical traits, and the arm talent is standard. The deep ball grades lower than Danny Dimes, and you see him constantly throwing with anticipation to his big-time Alabama wide receivers, and that ball's hanging up and slowing down in the last 10 yards and falling short and leaving wide receivers having to slow down their route. It's because he can't throw it out in front of them. So it leads to deep ball inaccuracy. Then you go over to the physical traits and the pocket mobility. It's standard. We grade it from statue, standard, and then tight end mobile. He's in the standard area, but when you see him pushed off platform, you see that his footwork actually starts to get a little frazzled. It will spread out a little bit more. He won't control his feet as well when he's actually having to be on the move. And when you see him off platform, you notice that he has to stall his feet out. He doesn't have the body control to throw on the run so much. Even Dan Orlovsky posted a play of this recently where he was against Kentucky and he was backpedaling to his left. But you see his feet come to a complete stop before he opens his hips and whips the ball through the coverage. And that's something you see from Dimes. And while that's okay and it still generated a good ball, it's a delay. And every time you give the defense back one step, it's one more chance that arm's getting hit and that ball's coming out.
Hit a lot of 49er fans who don't want him, including myself, see a lot of Jimmy Garoppolo to him. Jimmy has the crazy arm angles and he can make some interesting throws and fit it in tight windows, but he doesn't have, like you say, the prerequisite arm strength to, I don't know, like you see a lot of guys having to slow up on their routes. Like one of the worst throws he made last year was a screen pass to George Kittle that got him injured, which sailed. And he tends to do that a lot to guys where he puts the ball, he just doesn't have the arm strength to kind of keep it down, drive it, catch a guy in stride and have him go. And I see that a lot with Mac Jones. He has a lot about him is similar. He might be a little bit more sturdy than Garoppolo. Because Garoppolo is very injury prone. I don't know what the medicals are on Mac Jones as far as if you had any injuries in the past or whatever, but a lot of Niners fans just see the exact same quarterback, just younger and cheaper with maybe a little bit more durability. So I mean, yeah, there is traits about him that I like as far as his accuracy and his ability to read things quickly and make quick decisions. But to me, it's always, what do you do off platform? What can you do when the play's not there and you have to go outside of structure? And that's kind of where my opinion of him is a lot like Garoppolo. They only play within the structure. They don't make plays outside of, outside of what's drawn up on the, on the blackboard or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, in your division, you see a healthy dose of that.
Yes.
With the squirrel in Arizona, as you put it.
Oh, he's totally
I personally, as a football fan, love Kyler Murray, and I understand why you don't. And then
it annoys the hell out of me because I've already dealt with that with Russell, and now I got to deal with that with him. It's like, come on, man.
As soon as one starts slowing down, the other one shows up, and you're
right.
Like, oh,
come on.
But I mean, if you look at all the teams that are running the schemes right on the Shanahan and McVay scheme, I mean, you have Russell Wilson and you have Kyler Murray in the division. So what does McVay do? He goes and gets Matt Stafford, who has that incredibly big arm talent that allows him to attack all parts of the field.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are going to go up to 3 and take Mac Jones? It's kind of like one of those things is not like the other one situation.
A lot of the media coverage too has been very skewed towards pushing Mac Jones and kind of saying, reiterating the same things all the time about Justin Fields not being able to process quickly and he can't read a defense and stuff. And what do you think about that? Do you think some of that's narrative driven? Do you think there's truth to some of that?
Justin Fields is a really tough prospect with me. I've honestly gone through his tape 10 different times. Every single game this season, I have charted it in a way where I said, now say what's positive, and then I charted it and said, say what's negative. Just because, in my opinion, he is a Jekyll and Hyde prospect. There are some great positives that a lot of people are hanging their hats on. There are some things that you have to scheme away because there are concerns. Now, when people talk about the progressions, I don't buy that because you can see in his tape that he is going through his progressions. In fact, the problem with the progressions is actually something I'll call a pre-snap primary, where if he sees the coverage pre-snap and he sees a cover 2, and he knows that his third option is the best beater in that play, he'll look over at 1 and 2 and get off them very quickly because he wants 3 pre-snap. But when you give him the look that he wants pre-snap and then you change that post-snap, that's when he freezes. So when you see Nebraska with their zone blitzing defensive ends dropping under hot routes, you see Penn State bailing out their linebackers after they show blitz, there's an answer on the field, and Fields just stops. And he stares at where his answer was supposed to be, and he doesn't figure out where the next one is. So is he on pre-snap primary a lot? Yes. That's how the offense is built. Some people are saying he's not a very good anticipatory thrower, and other people are combating that by saying there's a lot of option routes in the offense. And while there are option routes in the offense at a high number, he is still late on those too. So you have anticipation questions. You have those, how can I fool him after the snap? In a lot of ways, the mental capacity of his game reminds me of Josh Allen. So it's the late throws, it's the fool him post-snap. And the other part about Fields that concerns me a little bit that I feel you have to scheme away, and this is the real reason why I don't like the fit in San Francisco, is that there are a number of times on tape where if you see him attacking the boundary, attacking deep over the safeties, his ball placement, his vision is phenomenal. His vision inside the hashes is concerning. There's a play against Penn State that examples this as best you can possibly have, where you kind of see 2 hides on the field, where you have 4 defenders on one side, 4 defenders on one side. It's a cover. It's an 8-man cover. And the tight end runs to the middle of the field and sits down, and he's wide open. The sea had parted, the tight end sitting there right in the middle of the field, and Fields just stares at him and is like, do I throw it? Do I throw it? He's hesitating on anything on the interior vision of a play. And that's something that's very similar to Tyrod Taylor. So that kind of concerns me, especially with San Francisco, because you guys like to do the vertical attacking hitters. that quick hit up the middle is something that he doesn't trust. It's either a throwing lane thing or a vision thing, and it's hard to figure out, but it is a concern in the middle of the field.
You're right, because a lot of the Niners offense, especially with Garoppolo, especially right now, is on the hashes or between the hashes. And
Yeah.
if that's what he's struggling with, yeah, you're right. It's not a good mix, like oil and water. That's, I didn't know that. And I'm okay with learning that. That is, sometimes when these guys on TV, when they're talking, I don't listen because I feel like they're, it's more about their brand or who they are than what they're actually talking about. So I tend not to pay attention. So when I see somebody who's not affiliated with anything and kind of just tells it like it is, I definitely pay more attention. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead. Go right ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, yeah, with the Fields thing with San Francisco, Shanahan, he went through their coaching camps with, I think, his father. They do have experience with this young man, and I expect Shanahan to be smart enough to alter to the strengths of his quarterback.
Yes.
But the question is what does that alteration look like, and how much of that is happening immediately with a player like Justin Fields? Because there is going to have to be a change in whatever offense runs him. There are very few schemes that I see that actually fit him perfectly. And that's the biggest concern I have with him, is that you have to scheme him perfectly. And it's not that he's a bad player. It's just he has a hole in his game.
The thing with the Niners, too, is they're kind of in a little bit of a window, the way they've kind of structured their roster. So, like, you can't really – this isn't the time to wait on somebody. That's why I understand why Mac Jones is mocked to them. I understand that part of it. I just can't get over the fact that some of these quarterbacks are so athletic and they can do stuff off platform. And so I think that's the intriguing part. That's why a lot of Niners fans are like Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson. They're all like, they're kind of innovators. Whereas, Mac Jones he plays it like it's on the chalkboard and he's accurate with the ball. And he's your typical Shanahan quarterback. So I get why the teams, like I said, they're mocked to he's mocked to the 49ers, but knowing what you just told me, it's like, it's deflating, but it's good to know. And you can understand why maybe teams are, especially like the Niners, of why if they don't select them, what the reasons are. Mm-hmm. Speaking of quarterbacks, what would you give your my next question here? What's your ranking 1 through 4 of like the top 4 prospects? What would you rank them?
Top 4, I have Zach Wilson. Honestly, I watched BYU in 2018 and saw him come in versus Utah State for 4 plays, and I immediately said, this is an NFL quarterback, and how did he end up in BYU? And even I was hyping him before the WAMU game at the end of 2018. I was hyping him going into 2019, and the Utah game was a little disappointing. But then the next couple of games with Tennessee, USC, Washington, he showed a little bit of what he had. And even then, I never expected him to end up quarterback 1 in this draft, but that's really where he's ended up for me. I have Zach as quarterback 1. I think he's the most scheme-stable quarterback of the entire group. I don't see any glaring weaknesses in his game that are something that you'd have to hide or overcome. Quarterback 2 is Trey Lance. And I know this is not where most people are.
No.
But with Trey Lance, the first thing people have to look at is the arm talent is a cheat code level arm talent. This is a special arm talent quarterback. There's a play, I believe, against Montana State where he boots out to his left and he opens his hips, throws a ball in between 3 defenders to a wide receiver, 29 yards on a line with neither of his feet on the ground.
That's amazing.
You can't just do that. Most quarterbacks can't do that. Very few actually can do that. And when you look at how the ball travels on the field, especially how far he can throw it just on his normal zip, you're talking about a 30, 32, 35-yard zip cap is what I call it. And I don't know of anybody other than Allen who's really pushing that. So that's the type of level arm talent you have. And with Trey, he's a lot more polished than people give him credit for. While the mechanics are a little, rustic. They definitely have some spots you want to clean up on them. He's running an offense that is, very similar to San Francisco, or at least the verbiage that's similar to San Francisco. You don't see him panicking on the field. You see some anticipatory throws. You see some good ball placement stuff on his film. And he's put up a lot of evidence on tape, but he hasn't put up the proof. So I wouldn't be surprised if Trey Lance ends up being the best quarterback in this draft class.
Yes, I've heard that. I agree.
But I can't grade it there because I don't have the proof on all the mental traits because of the level of competition.
Right.
3 and 4. Go on.
I was going to say he also just doesn't have the snaps, the experience. He's only played one full season as a starter.
He has 17 games.
17 games, yeah. Is that the same as Mac Jones, right?
Say what?
Mac Jones has the same amount of games played, right? 17?
Yep, and Fields has 22. The only two with a high level of experience in the college ranks are Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. Even Davis Mills has 13 games or so.
Wow. Oh, jeez, yeah. That's
2020 was a fun year, wasn't it?
That's crazy, man. Yeah, I mean, again, with the Niners, like I say, that the window that they're at least trying to show that they're in right now, I would love Trey Lance. Like, he's so intriguing. And I was watching some film that someone had up. These guys were breaking it down, and they were talking about how it some of it kind of resembles what they do in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, if they just, the window that they're in and how much of a learning curve is he going to deal with? That's the biggest thing. If the Niners had the time to wait, if they could, the perfect world, Garoppolo stays healthy all year. Niners try to make a run at it, whether they do or not. And then next year you have Trey Lance as your quarterback. That's my perfect scenario, but I don't know if the Niners think that way. I don't know if the Niners are trying to go all out this year and win it, or who knows. But Trey Lance is the pick. If that happened, I would be ecstatic. The guy that I've had on here before, Niner by Nature, we started on the whole Justin Fields train, and then we've kind of slowly pushed over to the Trey Lance train. So, yeah, that would be interesting. I actually, with him and Zach Wilson, either or, I would be okay with. But until the draft actually happens, and I know for sure I'm going to be, it's torture for me with all this Mac Jones talk. But
I'm not even a Niners fan, and it's torture for me.
There's so much overanalyzing, man. What do they call it? Paralysis by analysis or something like that, yeah. Where it's just, after a while, it's just like, okay, I got to turn everything off. This is ridiculous. Too much.
Shanahan was at Fields' pro day, and he smiled. What does that mean?
Right. And that's why I made a little video today where it was, as I called it, something about the buzz. All of a sudden there's this buzz that the Niners they're going to take Fields, and the betting, all the betting lines have us taking Fields all of a sudden, all because of like a pitcher and a pro day. And it's just like, oh my gosh, we just got to get the draft over with, man. This is getting ridiculous.
I agree.
Who I have here, let's see what I got here. Let's see here. Oh, who's your sleeper at quarterback this year? Or best, or who's your sleeper at being probably both? Who do you think is going to be the best in the class, and who's your sleeper?
I expect Zach to be best. I do think that if there was a sleeper or dark horse to be best, it would be Trey Lance. The arm talent that he has, it's an efficiency cheat code in offenses. That's why I would love him so much in San Francisco, because I know everybody thinks he's extremely raw, but it doesn't really show that way on tape. I just assume it's the D1A talk that everybody just goes raw. And I don't necessarily see it. In fact, I think if San Francisco takes him, it's really curious to find out where your bye week is, because it could be one of those, and not to compare players, but to compare situations. It's that Alex Smith giving way to Kaepernick scenario. And I feel like Trey Lance could take it over from Jimmy G mid-season, and away we go. That
would be okay in my book, as long as we win, man. I think the thing is with the Niners is they're going into year 5 with Lynch and Shanahan, and I've only had one winning season. So it's like there's kind of a pressure on them to pick the guy who's most pro ready, I guess. And I don't know. It'll be an interesting pick, because I mean, are they going to go against the grain, what they Shanahan's usually do, and get your pocket passer, your Mac Jones, or are you going to take a chance on doing something that's a little bit outside your wheelhouse and actually make a move on one of these mobile quarterbacks who can play off platform and make plays outside of the structure? I'm really high on Trey Lance. I always say Mac Jones because it's just he seems like he'd be the better fit only because maybe the level of competition he played against, and maybe that kind of translates into being a quicker transition. But I don't know. I'm not a coach. I'm not a scout, a talent evaluator. So it'll be interesting for sure.
It will, and I do have a video on the Mac Jones and how pro ready he is. I have him 5th of 5.
You have him 5th of 5? I think I started watching that. I might have started watching that at some point.
It's a historical thing because if you look at the 2016 draft, we had Wentz and we had Goff. Who was the most pro ready? Well, it's Dak Prescott. In 2017, the most pro ready was Deshaun Watson the moment he stepped on the field, even though people said he wouldn't be. He was the most athletic and the most tools quarterback. In 2018, we gave it to Baker until Lamar stepped on the field, and then it was Lamar. And even last year, who was the first one to really start shining? He was the tools guy with Justin Herbert. Mental traits take time to develop. They take time to adjust in the NFL to the speed of the game. And if you have a cheat code arm talent like Trey Lance does, you can get away with a lot of mental adjustment.
Yeah, kind of. I'm trying to think. The learning curve is quick and not really, because you still got to learn the heady part of the game, but it allows you to kind of compete on the pro level if you have like skills that are out of this world. Whether it's scrambling or able to make throws that normal people can't make, and you can fit it in tight windows, even if you're late, like you said about Josh Allen being able to do that. Josh Allen, man, I got to say, for a 49ers fan that lives in Buffalo, he's the best one they've had in a while. I hope he keeps getting better because Bills fans are stoked. I'm tired of hating on Bills fans. I want to see them maybe finally win one of these years, just so I don't have to hear about it anymore. And he is really good, but he definitely has to take his game to the next level.
Yeah, that the anticipation, the full field reads after the snap. I really expect a lot of teams to throw 2 over or man under 2 high against him this year. A lot more man looks and make him forced to process. If that happens and Dable can pull together an answer, or Josh Allen can make that answer happen in himself, then I'm going to get really, really excited about what Josh Allen is. But until you can solve that answer, that's where my last reservation is with him.
Yep. Being a Niners fan and watching the Kaepernick take over, my biggest fear when he took over was, okay, what if defenses eventually catch up to what he's doing? And then how is he going to adjust? And as we've seen, that never happened. He had the athletic ability to run, and he had a crazy arm, and he could make all these throws. But when teams started to kind of scheme what he was doing, especially when they were doing the, I don't know if they were doing, was it like a read option or something, like where he, the mesh point, and if they,
the veer.
Yeah, and then they played Baltimore in the Super Bowl. Baltimore kind of gave the blueprint of how to start playing Kaepernick. And after that point, Kaepernick's play level from that point until he was no longer the quarterback continued to go downhill because he never made the adjustment to the adjustment. So you're right. That is going to be interesting to see if his name is escaping me in Buffalo. Josh Allen can make that adjustment to the adjustment.
Yeah. And with Kaepernick, I think it was the Rams and the Ravens that season who just told everybody, rule number 1 remains undefeated. Hit the dang quarterback.
Yeah, hit the quarterback. And that's what they did. The night that Baltimore punished him in that Super Bowl.
Sure did.
And we didn't have a... And then when you seen him go against a good secondary like Seattle, like the following year, I knew it was a short-lived thing because you want to see the guy be able to make progress in his game where he's not just depending on his athletic abilities and he becomes more of a heady player. Those are the dangerous ones, like Mahomes, where he's got the tools, but he's also got the ability to mentally break it down. Remember the first year when they played New England in the NFC Championship game, and Belichick, I don't know if Belichick, what he was doing, if he was blitzing them up the middle, or he was doing something schematically that he couldn't deal with, like he couldn't adjust to. And then you see him the following season, like completely set the world on fire. And he made that progress. He made the jump, took his game to the next level, not just athletic ability, but also a heady player. And be interesting. I really hope Trey Lance is the pick. I don't think he's going to be. Unfortunately, I think the Niners are either going to draft Mac Jones or Justin Fields. Those are the two guys. I don't see them really, because I don't think Zach Wilson's going to be available, honestly. So
no, I don't think he gets past 2.
No, I don't either.
I'd be stunned.
My last question for you is, let's see here. I wrote that they look better in my head. Who's the most capable of being a bust in this QB class?
I know it's a loaded question because it so many people have so many different definitions of bust. I kind of reserve that comment for the special ones like Josh Rosen and Dwayne Haskins. I called Josh Rosen a bust before the draft. I said Dwayne Haskins was very likely to bust. Both of them were 3rd-round grades for me. So this class, I've already said, I've been on record saying this class is like surprisingly boring, that the prospects are straightforward. I think the biggest storyline of this prospect is that Mac Jones is going to get overdrafted and that Trevor Lawrence isn't as lofty of projections as people give him. So there is part of me that says public perception. I think the 2 busts would be Mac Jones if he doesn't go to San Francisco, and Trevor Lawrence. They're both in big danger of not reaching the lofty expectations that will be required of them if they go that high. Even if Mac goes to San Francisco, I do expect him to be a little bit better than Jimmy G, but I don't expect to really start seeing that until year 3. Yeah. Because usually the mental trait quarterbacks take that year 1 to really start swimming, and then year 2 they settle in, and year 3 you finally see them thrive because they're up to the speed of the NFL and they can get back the area of gains that they make their gains on. So I would not be surprised to see Mac considered a bust, but I don't think he is a bad quarterback. I think he could be a middle of the road quarterback, maybe on the 3-4 tier. In San Francisco, I'd expect him to be in that, 12 to 24 ranked quarterback. Trevor Lawrence, I expect him to be down there as well. And the Jacksonville situation on top of that concerns me. So I would not be surprised if the perception on Trevor is nowhere near what we see, and that I have to actually start fighting in favor of Trevor Lawrence in the near future.
The problem when you're really bad is you get the top quarterback or top prospect. So you always go to the worst situation. That's why the Niners, even though they struggled last year with injuries and stuff, they're a pretty talented team. Really, where they lack is quarterback. That's the position that's kind of like the determining factor. If they can get a guy who can play 16 games and have play that it improves weekly and can adjust like I don't really want a Jimmy clone. That's why I'm so against the Mac Jones thing. But then part of me is like, he's such a perfect fit because he would have all these weapons around him, and it would be pretty much like playing in Alabama all over again. They say that I was watching something where they just talked about how he just, part of the reasons that he was so good at Alabama was the great supporting cast, and that he would be walking into the same thing and, with Kittle and Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and Raheem Mostert and all those guys, it'd be kind of similar. So he might have a smoother transition. But like, then what? Like, what's the next step? Like you said, I'd rather have a guy who had the physical traits and the mental developed later on after that. But I honestly don't know who they're drafting, and it's really frustrating. You got to take a chance on one of these guys and just go with it. So who knows? We'll see soon enough, I guess.
Yeah. And honestly, if we do look at the actual prospect themselves and say who's most scheme fragile and who could bust if they're put in the wrong circumstances, that's where Justin Fields makes me extremely nervous. Because if teams don't identify his strengths and identify his weaknesses, they could put him into an offense that really drops down his efficiency. So on the traditional sense, I'd be less surprised to see Justin Fields bust, but the only other two that I would consider bust possible are only on that perception level. That being said, I expect all five to play quality seasons for a number of years. I just don't think there's anyone in this class who is that top five, Hall of Fame level quarterback. But Trey Lance could surprise me.
Who's your fifth? Is it Mond? Is it Webb?
Fifth I have is Mac Jones. Sixth I have is Davis Mills.
So what do we got?
And I think I forgot to say who my 3 and 4 were too. I have 3 being Justin Fields ahead of Trevor Lawrence, but it is 3A, 3B. And that's specifically because the last step I do in the quarterback evaluation process is I watch the quarterback and I ask myself, how would I make a scheme around this player? And I see more potential in what I could do with Justin Fields than what I could do with Trevor Lawrence.
Awesome. That was great, man. You nailed all these questions 100%. Do you have anything you want to add about your channel? If you want to tell people where to go to subscribe?
Yeah, we're on YouTube at Football Unlocked. We have our Twitter handle as well. You see it in the likely around my screen with Football Unlock because the character limit and everything like that. We are new in this last year. We started up in September, but we do cover the draft and specifically quarterbacks because that is something that we've been working on building our own evaluation system since 2011, 2013. That has really shifted what it takes to be a starting quarterback in the NFL in the current game because we know that the game is changing. And after the draft, we will be moving on to fantasy football season because I've been a deep Dynasty League fantasy football player for 15 or so years. And that's something else that we look into the schemes and the systems and what the output potentials are of players. During the season, we cover the game, but we also do a little bit of gambling. So if you start with us right now, you'll definitely see the draft stuff, but there is other elements to what we cover. But we're always good. We're always interested in a good quarterback story.
Absolutely. I didn't pay attention much to my questions today because I really wanted you to have the floor. So to anybody in the comments, it's not personal. I just really wanted him to kind of have this platform because when you guys watch his video, you'll see the exact same thing you've seen here, man. It's just like, I have nothing to say. It's all positive. I learned something every video that I watch you, man. It's awesome.
I really appreciate it. And I'm really bad with taking compliments. So,
it looks like that's it, man. Unless you have, like I said, if you have anything else or.
I think that about covers it for this time right here. I mean, I look forward to coming back and talking about the specifics of the scheme that we can use with the San Francisco quarterback whenever they get there.
I'll definitely. I would love to have you on if you'd be willing to come on. That was what I was going to ask you.
Absolutely.
Sweet. Your analysis and your knowledge is second to none, man. It's nice. A lot of us YouTubers are just kind of guys that are fans, and we don't. Some of us are, break down film or whatever. I'm not one of them, but awesome. You did great, man. Thank you very much for coming on. And hopefully I'll get to work with you again in the future.
Absolutely, man.
All right, boss. Take care of yourself.
You too.
Have a good one.